Yo, what's up guys? It's Vocalot. Check out this tormented Zir kill. Dude is just gone. I've got the build that does this covered for you in today's build guide.
So, Frankie, what are we tired of seeing? Everywhere you look, the only build people are really recommending is Bone Spirit with Bone Prison. Bone Spirit with Bone Prison. Bone Spirit with Bone Prison. Z, Z, Z. There's other builds, dude. Minions can still tear through endgame content. Shadow Necro sure as hell isn't dead. But I've got something special for you guys. This is my favorite build right now for the Necromancer. I'm calling it the Bone Splinters Gatling Necro. Or RPK. I can't decide. They both spray bullets like crazy, just like this build. And I'll be upfront with you. We are using Bone Spirit, but in a completely different way. So what we are doing is taking advantage of the Shattered Spirits aspect. So that way when we cast Bone Spirit, it shoots our Bone Splinters everywhere. All of our damage is coming from the Bone Splinters. And with the right items, you can have 30 plus points in your Bone Splinters. It's crazy. So let's get into how all this works together. As you can see from the gameplay behind me, this build is making easy work of this horde. I'll sum it all up for you real quick. We have a bunch of CDR, so that way our Bone Spirit is under 7 seconds, which the first upgrade for Bone Spirit is if Bone Spirit critically strikes, its cooldown is reduced by 7 seconds. So we want max crit, that way every time we use Bone Spirit it'll crit and then its cooldown is immediately back up. And that's where the Gatling gun and RPK references come into play. When facing an enemy that you can't one-shot, you can literally hold down Bone Spirit and just let that thing blast, shooting out hundreds of Bone Splinters at them that just completely shred them. And there's a little trick with this I'll let you in on. Normally, when you cast Bone Spirit, the Bone Splinters are shot out in a circle around you. But if you're in the enemy's hitbox, they don't fly out. Literally all of the splinters will hit them. And that's when you can absolutely shred bosses and elites. Some bosses or elites you can just walk straight into them and it'll count as being in their hitbox, so that's super easy. But some, that doesn't count. You have to basically be inside them, which there's a couple ways you can do that. If you've mastered the distance in which you leap when you evade, you can just dash into them then spam Bone Spirit. If not, a lot of them, blood misting into them will get you close enough. But if you still really struggle, then you can just grab the Ghost Walker aspect on your boots since it makes you unhindered. And then you can literally get directly on top or inside just 100% in their hitbox. I've gotten used to it though, so I don't bother with the Ghost Walker. You really gotta just try it out and see what you think you need. Now, there's a few things that can be interchangeable to fit your playstyle that they don't affect things much. But I'll get into that when we go over skills and items in a minute. But this build shreds. I can run through Pit 100 easy. I'm yet to push it as far as I can because I'm still theory crafting with the build. I'm trying to get it as optimal as I can. There's still a few things I want to try. But I'll make sure I keep the build planner updated if I do end up making any changes. But just so you can see the damage here, here's a tormented Ice Beast. And as you can see, he's just gone in a second.
Alright, let's just go ahead and kill Zir here real quick, just so I can show you guys the damage. As long as he doesn't push me away, and I can actually get in his hitbox to make all the Bone Splinters hit, he's just deleted. Just gone, just like that. Crazy. Anything good? Doesn't look like it. But yeah, just get in their hitbox and they are gone.
Alright Frankie, what are we thinking here? I mean, the build's good. It's fun. It's not too hard to get going. I definitely don't think it's something that's a requirement for everyone to play. Even if you don't play Necro, you know, like Lightning Spear this season. Because man, this season it's like, even if you've never played the Sorcerer before, you have to play them now. And I mean, I don't even think it's a requirement for every Necro player either. But I mean, if you're looking for builds to play on Necro, I definitely think this should be high on the list for you to consider. So Frankie, I'm thinking 7-4. Yeah, 7-4. One guide, everybody knows the rules. 7-4, that's a review. Now, on to the items. In the background here, you can see me running through some tier 100 pits. But let's go over the items. First off, I do have Shaco Interiors, but they are not required for this build. But of course, they do make it better. Alright, starting with our helmet, I am running the Shaco, but like I said, it's not required. So if you don't have a Shaco, the most important thing you want to be looking for in your helmet would be cooldown reduction. Preferably a GA on the cooldown reduction if you can manage to find it. Then you'll be wanting max life and either armor or resistance to all elements, depending on your chest. For tempers, if you don't have a Shaco, you'll want max life and corpse tendril size. And then for the aspect, you'll want the concussive strikes aspect for more stagger. And then on your chest, preferably Ethereals, but if you don't have one, you'll want to look for armor, max life, and resistance to all elements. For tempers, if you don't have Ethereals, you want percent total armor and corpse tendril size. And for the aspect, take hardened bones for damage reduction. Now, for the gloves, I really recommend the Paingoer's gauntlets. The extra ranks it gives to basic skills are just too good. Not to mention it gives cooldown reduction, which we need for our ult to stay up 100% of the time, for extra crit, and the shield, which never lets us die. And it gives attack speed, so we can cast Bone Spirit faster for more Bone Splinters, and it gives chance to stun, which will help with staggering bosses ridiculously fast. But if you haven't found them, if you go regular gloves, I'd look for crit damage, intelligence, and attack speed. And if you temper those, you want critical strike damage for sure, and probably lucky hit to freeze or stun, either or. For the aspect, you would probably want to take the conceited aspect for the extra damage while having a barrier, since you'll basically always have one from your Bone Storm because you'll have the shielding storm aspect on your pants. Which brings us to the pants. You definitely want the shielding storm aspect on them. And the most important thing with the pants is ranks to Bone Splinters. If you can find a GA on it, that's even better. Then preferably you'll want max health and intelligence. For tempers, you'll want max life and chance to either stun or freeze for stagger. Now, my items, my tempers, they are not all perfect. Quite a few of them are not what I wanted, so I'm still looking for replacement items. So keep that in mind as I'm showing you. There's a couple things that might not line up with what I'm saying, but everything is in the build guide, so you can check there to see exactly what you want to be aiming for. With your boots, movement speed is always nice. I mean, I hate going slow, so I always try to get movement speed. But mainly you want intelligence and max life. For tempers, I like to run extra movement speed. I had bad luck with tempers, so I only got it during Blood Mist. But hey, you know, I'll take it for now until I find a better pair. So I'd try for movement speed, and then corpse tendril size, which I had bad luck again and got corpse explosion. I really need to get another pair of boots. And then the aspect, that's really based on your preference. If you need Ghostwalker to get in the enemy's hitboxes, then of course run that. But personally, I'm lazy. I don't like spamming my curses, so I took Cursed Aura to do it for me. Now our weapon. This is extremely important. You want to have the Shard of Varathiel. This drastically increases our damage and honestly is a must if you want to run this build properly. The all stats it gives is always nice, along with the basic attack speed and max resource. But the biggest thing here is the ranks to basic skills, and the passive on it is insane. Percentage increased damage on our basic skills, which is where all our damage is coming from. The boost from this item is insane. I'm already putting out massive amounts of damage, but if I had a max roll, my damage would be much higher. So I'm not even going to list an alternative weapon here. The Shard of Varathiel is a must, so get your hands on one. And for our offhand, I'd recommend using a focus over a shield here. You want to look for max life, intelligence, and percent damage. Now, if you don't have a Shaco, I would say swap one for cooldown reduction, probably the max life I'd swap out. For tempers, you want chance for bone splinters to cast twice. This is huge for our damage. And of course you want critical strike damage increase. Everything we're doing revolves around crits, so you want its damage increased as much as you can. And for the aspect, take the Great Feast. Yes, it drains your essence, but you get back to pretty much full essence from every cast of your bone spirit with the bone splinters that are shooting out. Now, my necklace is something I'm still searching for a replacement of. You want crit chance here to make sure you're at 100% so your bone spirit always resets. Second, if you can get it, ranks to compound fracture for more damage. Then lastly, just flat % damage increase. If you find ranks to avulsion, you can run that as well, but the regular % damage will be higher % damage output in the end. But as you can see, my necklace isn't even 925 and stats are not optimal. I've just had horrible luck finding a replacement. I guess I put all my luck into finding the Shaco and Interials, and now it's punishing me with the necklace. But when I do find a replacement, it'll be these stats that I'm recommending. Now, if you don't have a Shaco, I would say trade out the ranks to compound fracture to cooldown reduction if you can, because cooldown reduction is really important with this build. We got to make sure our Bone Storm can have 100% uptime, and make sure our Bone Spirit's cooldown is under 7 seconds, so it'll always reset. Now for tempers with your jewelry, I'd recommend taking ranks to rapid ossification somewhere, whether it's on a necklace or ring, just grab it somewhere. I have it on my necklace currently, but it's extremely useful to have because one issue with this build you can run into is if you cast Bone Spirit too many times and you cast it after you killed all the enemies, that last Bone Spirit will just be flying off into nowhere. And with no enemies for it to hit, it's not going to crit, which means its cooldown won't reset. So you'll have to wait for the cooldown to go down like normal. But with us always draining mana from the Great Feast aspect, having rapid ossification leveled up means that constantly it'll be triggering seconds of our bone skills to be reduced. So now it's not a requirement, but I highly recommend it. Now I won't go into the tempers for each individual piece of jewelry because they're interchangeable. But across your jewelry you want 4 things: rapid ossification, a chance to freeze or stun, bone critical strike damage, and casting the Caver skill restores essence. It doesn't really matter which pieces you put them on, but you want those 4 on your jewelry. The aspect you'll want on your necklace is the Shattered Spirits aspect. This is honestly the most important part of the build. This is what allows our Bone Splinters to be cast from Bone Spirit. This is a must. Now with your rings, if you can manage to get a Starless Skies, I imagine it would increase damage even more, but I haven't been lucky enough to get one. So if you have one, I would say run it. But if you don't, like me, you want critical strike chance, % damage, and % critical strike damage. On one ring, make sure you take the Moonrise aspect. The 80% basic skill damage from it is huge, and the attack speed is great as well. If you run Starless, use this aspect on your second ring. If you don't have Starless like me, then take the Sacrificial aspect on your second ring for the extra minion sacrifice boost. And lastly here, for our gems, you're going to want to run rubies in all of your armor pieces. The extra life is just too good. And I just realized I have the wrong gems in my weapons. You don't want emeralds. Take topaz. The percentage is higher for the basic damage. I'll make sure that that's set right in the build guide. Don't run emeralds, take topaz. And in your jewelry, if you have the right stats in your armor pieces, you do not need the extra elemental resistances, so you can take skulls to make sure that your armor is past the cap. And that about covers everything with items. I have setups for both on the build planner. Just switch between Ubers and no Ubers to see the build differences. Alright, before we look at spells, let's take a look at the Book of the Dead. We aren't running any minions, we are sacrificing all of them here. So you're going to sacrifice the Skirmishers for the extra crit chance, sacrifice the Cold Mages for the increased vulnerable damage, and then sacrifice the Iron Golem for that extra increased critical strike damage. And on to our skill tree. We of course want to get as many points into Bone Splinters as we possibly can, because that is where all of our damage is coming from. Go ahead and grab the Initiate's Bone Splinters just to get more vulnerable put out. And we do want Blight here specifically so we can get the Supernatural Blight. It's just an easy 20% damage increase. 1 point in Hued Flesh just so we can have more corpses out for passives and glyphs. We do want Blood Mist. 1, it's your oh shit spell. 2, it does help you get inside enemy hitboxes, which is extremely nice. I'm taking the Ghastly Blood Mist just to have more corpses out. And with our curses, we of course do want Decrepify. We want the Abhorrent Decrepify. That way you have that chance to reduce your active cooldowns by 1 second. You want Amplify Damage for the damage. Death's Embrace for the damage and damage reduction. I like to take Death's Approach just because I hate being slow. And we do want Corpse Tendrils, specifically the Plagued Corpse Tendrils, just to get more vulnerable put out. Go ahead and take Necrotic Carapace as well, just to get that Fortify, help keep you alive. And we do want Bone Spirit. Of course, if we don't have Bone Spirit, we can't take advantage of the Shattered Spirits aspect, and then we won't be launching our Bone Splinters everywhere. I'd recommend taking the Ghastly Bone Spirit, get that extra 10% crit so you can get closer to the 100%. But remember, your damage is not coming from Bone Spirit, it is coming from Bone Splinters. So you only need 1 point in this, okay? And then get Serration, that way you can pick up Rapid Ossification with cooldown reduction, Evulsion for damage, and Compound Fracture for damage as well. And because we are sacrificing our minions, go ahead and take Standalone and Memento Mori. And because you'll pretty much always be healthy due to the shield from Bone Storm and all your Fortify, take Inspiring Leader so that way you can have that extra crit chance. And we of course want Bone Storm, and you want the Supreme Bone Storm for that extra crit chance. Now with key passives, Ossified Essence is really the only key passive that works with our build, but it's useless half the time. The second you cast Bone Spirit, your essence goes to 0, so when your Bone Splinters launch out, they're not getting extra damage from the Ossified Essence. Pretty much the only time Ossified Essence has an effect is when you proc that Temper or your Bone Splinters to cast twice. The first cast will get all your essence back, and then the second cast will get the extra damage from Ossified Essence. Now, for the Paragon, I'll go ahead and show you from the build planner itself. I spent way too much time calculating to get our damage boosted with this board, but hey, if you guys have any thoughts with it, feel free to let me know in a comment below. In our starting board, we're going to take Territorial. There's a decent amount of easy dexterity to pick up, giving us a good damage boost to close enemies. Then we'll move up to the Bone Graft board, and we'll be using the Essence Glyph, giving us 194% bonus critical strike damage. And before going up, we're actually going left to the Scent of Death board, where we'll be using the Control Glyph for extra damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Also picking up some more critical strike damage, max life, and of course the Scent of Death legendary node. Then back to the Bone Graft board. We move up, grabbing max life, bone critical strike damage here, and then the Bone Graft legendary node. Moving up, we go into the Bloodbath board, using the Exploit Glyph for more vulnerable damage. Also grabbing some max life, damage while fortified, and damage while healthy. Lastly, we move left to the Flesh Eater board, and we take Gravekeeper for extra damage to elites, and an extra 18% damage when we have close corpses. And we also pick up some extra critical strike damage. Now, you guys might look at this and say, hey, it's only 5 boards, this can't be nothing special. But check this out. You've got 46% max life, 306.5% critical strike damage, 22% crit damage to enemies not healthy, 75% bone critical strike damage, 55% bone damage, 40% damage, 6% bone critical strike chance, which is useful, 119% damage to crowd controlled, 77.2% damage to close enemies, 95% damage while fortified, 61.8% vulnerable damage, 10% damage dealt after hitting a vulnerable enemy, 18% damage with close corpses, 125% damage to injured enemies, 43.9% damage while healthy, 96% damage to elites, and 70% ultimate damage.
That's a total, literally, of 1,214.4 total different percent damage increases. There's a few other tidbits in there, like armor and elemental resistances, of course, too, but I just wanted to show you guys the damage. But yeah, try this board out with the build, and let me know if you guys think of any changes that should be made to it. But so far, the board's been working tremendously for me. Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this build guide. This Gatling gun necro is honestly tons of fun. If you do decide to try it, let me know your thoughts on it. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any feedback on the build at all, let me know as well, because it's still a work in progress. So, what do you guys want me to cover next? I've tried just about everything, and I'd love to share with you. Well, if you've stuck around this long, you're awesome, and I greatly appreciate it. If you guys did enjoy this video, feel free to help me out by liking and dropping a sub. Well, I'm out of here for now. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Now roll the outro, which used to be my intro. So I guess you guys have to watch the video again. Well, I guess I'll see you in a few.